Hello and welcome back to another edition of Indiepocalypse Radio. I'm back again as your host, Andrew, the host of Indiepocalypse Radio. And, oops, wait, I forgot. There was one more thing I forgot. The important one where I tell like 500 people that the show is live. Okay, the show is live, everyone. Too many. There should just be a button for this. I said every week, almost every week, there should just be a button that tells all social media things that the show is live. But anyway, we're here. I'm Andrew, host of Indiepocalypse Radio, the Indiepocalypse adjacent radio show that is sort of like where it's a cross between interview show and post-con hangout. That's the snappiest version I've got for it. Indiepocalypse, of course, being the monthly anthology of alternative games and all that stuff. We are here with developers of said games. The first, who you may know from, we got two issue 48s, two people who have just left the light of being the baby favorite child, and there's the first one with Matchbox. It's Worm Food. Hello, how are you doing today?
Hello. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you here. This is the point of the show. My favorite part of the show is that you could just I mentioned post-con hangout, but it is a post-con hangout for people who will never likely all be at a con together.
I realistically will not have the budget for con going for a good while, so it's
Yes,
much appreciated.
I took a whole year off of any kind of travel, and then, but the government's giving me a lot of money this year because I was bad at business. Very excited.
Delightful.
If you if you
The
do any
indie dream.
yeah, if you're really bad at business but also if you're bad at business but good at tracking your expenses, the government gives you money.
Oh, incredible. I'm going to put that one in the notes for later.
Yeah, it's very helpful. I'll put in my 1099s from like PayPal and Patreon, and then the government be like, "You owe us money," and I'll be like, "No, I don't. Let me get to my business expenses." And they're like, "Oh, oh my God, we're so sorry. Here's even more money."
Yeah, desperately not looking forward to mine for this year, but maybe I'll
Yeah.
take a page out of your playbook.
Yes, it's very helpful. I got surprised. I got surprised how much I got back with just putting on my regular W-2. I'm thrilled to be living. Uh, and granted, that's all money in taxes that I paid more in taxes than I'm getting back. But you know how taxes,
Yay, taxes. I feel you.
yeah, fun stuff. But we're not here to talk about taxes.
This is the tax segment of the show. It's fine.
Well, you can't blame me. I live in Massachusetts. How can you blame me? It's all I think about.
It's fine.
I don't know if
It's
people.
Chicago for me, so
I don't.
same thing. I got you.
I don't know if people still say that or if it's still like such a high tax rate compared to everything else. But I remember it being like such a high, especially. Well, in my case, I can go to Vermont where there's like no sale. Is it Vermont? Vermont or New Hampshire. One of those has zero sales tax, and Mass has like 6%. But who cares? We're here to talk about video games. And speaking of video games, important question right off the top. I gotta know. Um, how did you hear about Indiepocalypse?
Yes. So the honest answer is I discovered it a long time ago while browsing for, well, browser games because I always tell people like the reason I got into indie dev wasn't so much like, the early indie darlings, the critical darlings that were,
Yeah.
household names for a while, but more so I grew up very poor. So Flash games were really the
Ah,
basis for
yes.
me wanting to get into indie, and that love has kind of stayed with me. And I try to carry that into my own work. I really like Game Boy Studio for that reason. I like the ease of creating stuff that can just be, you know, pushed up to itch.io and you're good to
Yes.
go.
Right.
It's playable. It's good.
People forget Newgrounds were indie games. Like it
Oh
doesn't.
gosh, yes.
I feel like that like does not. People don't think about that in the same way.
No, it's very funny you mention it because, like, just on a whim, I pushed up Matchbox, which I made in like very casually over the course of like 3 days. So that's one reason it's so jank and barely functions. Like, honest to God, almost never go back and fix jam projects.
Right.
It's just not in me. But on a whim pushed it out to Newgrounds, and it ended up like front paged for their Halloween event. So it ended up for such a small jam project getting much more attention than I ever planned on it or thought it would have. But
Yeah,
which was gratifying that people vibed with something so small and so like very, very condensed in, I mean, not just like its runtime, but its lens.
yeah. Well, I will say that I vibed with it. Definitely, is how it got its way there. I was at a show like 2 years ago, and people were like very. Some people who were like still very into Newgrounds be like, Newgrounds is very cool, and there's like very artist forward, but like technically I can't really fit my stuff on Newgrounds. So I'm like, I don't know how to. I've never thought about how to work my way into Newgrounds, you know. But
Yeah, I feel it's interesting that like their community is still vibrant, still growing in a
yeah,
lot of ways. I think, they've had like successes like Friday Night Funkin', in the past years
yeah.
that grew out of Newgrounds specifically.
Oh,
So very much still active.
I was surprised. I remember being shocked and getting it immediately when I could buy Alien Hominid on my PlayStation 2.
Oh, it's a throwback.
It was like this Flash game, purchasable on a home console.
God, yeah, I think they did that remaster recently for it, right? Like a re-release of it.
I think so. It's also very weird that they've even just been trucking at it for like the behemoth is like became a thing for. I guess they still are, but like it's weird. You can still see like Flash ethos in like those games. They still
Yeah. I think like the intersection between Flash games and like zine DIY art mentality is just something that I really try to push in my own work a lot, just
right.
because it feels so interconnected to me.
Yeah, yeah. Flash it feels like breaking at the edges of a imperfect medium, but it works and it's free, and I can self publish with it for no money, which is the ideal artist medium, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, I can see in my own stuff like the influence of sort of like Flash game edginess. But that's
Yeah,
okay. I've come to terms with that. It's like to some degree I will always be drawing a demon anime boy with angel wings. Like that's just the inevitable conclusion of all art.
right. That's as we free ourselves and let ourselves truly be free and indulgent in our art. The Sephiroth is still around. Well, I don't know what you're talking about, folks. Sephiroth is still around. He's still here. He still has one. He still has a massive sword and one wing and giant hair. He is the prototypical version. And the
It's
wing is
the it's
cool.
the whole like circle of taste thing, right? Like you start out and you're young and you're like, oh, like the robot dragon fighting a
Yeah.
dinosaur is really cool. And then you're like, that's not what taste is. No, this is what like real taste and like artistic development is. And then you just end up coming back full circle to no, the robot dragon fighting the dinosaur is actually really cool.
Yes, I have. I think on this very show, I pretty much uh, what's the word? Almost came close to quoting or paraphrasing Roger Ebert's sentiment on that idea, which
Yeah.
is like an exceptional piece of writing and like understanding of just like art. I'm always surprised. I always remember. I always forget. He's a good. That guy was a good writer. Sometimes.
Oh, I know. I recently fell into while researching for a paper. Um, Resurfaced his old like video games can never be art paper, which
Yeah.
always just like is at
Oh,
the back of my brain.
it's but it. I think a year or two ago, I like was online like people should actually read this. He like made a lot of good points, and I think I agree with him. Not that video
I
games can never.
agree. Yeah.
Not that games can't be art, but especially in a specific argument he was having, like the game's representative did not do a good job at all.
Oh, entirely. Yeah, like the when you look at the sample set he was given, it's like of course that's the conclusion that was made because like it's the language framed around it isn't indicative of anything that's art. And it really just does speak to the fact that video games as a medium are in this place where most mediums start out as, derided by derided by like critics and whatnot, like novels being considered a waste of time,
Right.
but then they find their way into legitimacy. But games started as a product, they didn't become a product eventually like most art forms. So they're kind of working backwards on that path to becoming like a recognized medium, it feels
Right.
like. And it often feels like they're protesting themselves a lot of the time.
Right. The shackles of product weigh heavy around games, and making uh, and maybe I'm too far gone, but like if you just make a puzzle platform but it has nice art and is lightly about depression, that's like you're not going far enough. You're too afraid of not being a video game to
No,
really be
entirely.
art.
Yeah, no, exactly. I went to a tech art exhibit recently, and part of that was obviously games, but it often feels like they are trying to, in a lot of ways, not be a game. I think
Right.
one of them actually had like a system of play. And I don't think that all games have to be fun. I think your
No.
game has to be interesting. It has to elicit something, but it's, they seem to really protest being games of like trying to take that language, that framework of digital interactivity, but try to avoid being a game as much as possible.
Yeah, because I've been thinking we probably do need different words for games, like in the same
Oh,
way
new
that
media.
well, like if you think about how not every piece of written word is a novel.
Oh yeah, it's incredibly limiting.
Right.
And new media feels like a very buzzwordy take on it that doesn't really speak to the nuance of
Right.
what the medium can do. So yeah, interactive art is kind of a mouthful a lot of the
Yes.
time. So I do wish we had something else.
Yeah. There's no because piling all these things under game does not work in the same way. The Pal World and Matchbox might as well be two entirely different things.
Yeah, I mean, I'm never going to, that's the thing. Like, I'm never going to attempt something on that scale, right? I don't
Right.
have any desire to. I know lots of people who don't. Like, to compare, I mean, even indie, right? Like, indie, I mean, this is a very old conversation at this point, but like, the things we call indie games, even, is like, that is such a broad range. Like, you're talking about multiple $1 million of funding versus, your laptop that barely works in your
Right.
basement.
Yes, running RPG Maker 98.
As God intended.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
it's truly the only way to make games. It's the equivalent, but that's the equivalent of like I'm recording an album on my laptop microphone with my hand me down guitar.
God, yeah, I mean, like that's exactly also why I love pixels so much. Like I
Yeah,
have dabbled in 3D, but there's some level of continuing to make browser games, or for lack of a better term, low-end games with pixels that feels like some form of digital folk art, or
yeah.
it feels like its roots.
There was a small time where I got very obsessed with just what if we just stop calling it pixel art and just start calling it lo-fi. Uh,
I love that.
because like even like because pixel art also is like super different. Like there's that new HD pixel art style that a lot of stuff is trending towards, but like that doesn't look that it's like a weird version, like a weird reinterpretation of old art, and but also like are all 2D games pixel art games, and like does it mean you can see the blocks? What does that mean? uh,
Yeah, no, I think that like pixel purism gets definitely boring.
right.
Just people who are obsessed with like what the rules surrounding it are, which you run into a lot when you try to dabble in the community in any kind of way. But outside of that, like there's people doing very interesting things in terms of how they interpret what constitutes like pixel art. There's some very experimental illustrators out there using it as a medium right now.
Yeah.
And I would love to see that translate more to games because at the moment that feels very rooted in specifically like pixel art as artistry rather than it being brought into the game space.
Yeah, there's especially I think now I keep thinking about those. What do they call it? HD 2D is the turn of phrase for it. Um,
Yeah.
but that's like emulating an old. It's also very weird how like I don't know how to describe this, but modern pixel art doesn't look like old games. Like it doesn't.
Yeah, because it's like it's not even you're trying to replicate something that was developed around the constraints of the time's technology. Like
Right.
it doesn't, of course, it doesn't look the same. And so it's kind of why I don't love when it's used as like a form of nostalgia. I think nostalgia is the death of like good games, essentially.
Right.
If I could remove one thing from games, it would be nostalgia. I'm just like,
Yes.
please, please, please look for your influence anywhere outside of the video game sphere.
Or have like a more exciting taste than I like Super Mario Brothers.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just saying, if I see another game that is dude with brown hair and a sword, I'm gonna have some kind of an aneurysm.
Wake me up when you have played Legacy of the Wizard excessively. When you become a
Uh,
Nihon Felcom freak.
oh
Uh,
my God, I was doing a deep dive on those video essays around like origins of Nihon Falcon recently. That's been like a hyperfixation for a hot minute.
I, I, I just a couple in this last month I've been thinking about Gust, and I'm going like it's something that's always existed in my periphery that I have no awareness of. But like as a like, it's like a Japanese studio that does bread and butter releases like every year. They're like
Yeah, it's just no, go ahead.
no. I was gonna say they just know what they're doing, and there's like I feel like there were more sustainable like production art models that people are just opting to ignore.
Yeah, I guess that's part of like what led me to do this because I feel like I spent so long like chasing like incredibly in-depth animation and like rendering styles that were wildly impressive that just kind of I ultimately obviously prevented me from really getting anywhere with it because you don't have the momentum to keep going.
Yeah,
And so I was able to create more the instant I stepped back and like looked more at like what does stylized lo-fi art look like,
yeah.
and just leaning more into the rootsy stuff.
Even when like massive budget, like huge releases, whatever Infinite Wealth is like top selling game, but you play that, you see how many corners are cut constantly. Never mind,
Yeah.
never mind that they're reusing environments they made. They've been using Camarocho for like 25 years or whatever. Um,
No, yeah. It's like I think like I don't know, for better or worse, I do admire like Jeff Vogel's style of like I'm going to shamelessly reuse assets from RPG to RPG
yeah.
because why not? You should absolutely do that.
Why?
There's no reason for you not to.
Well, yeah, right, right. How many? People get excited about like, oh, look at this, these props are reused. They've pulled these out of like this is old Swamp Thing props that they reused and painted fur on and turned into a Star Wars character or whatever. Like mediums
Yeah,
are
it's like what do you call it? Removing the stigma from destigmifying
yeah,
asset flips. Asset flips are good actually.
right, right. It makes it sustainable. Oh, there's an article from 3 days ago um, on Rock Paper Shotgun with Jeff Vogel
Oh, delightful.
about saying sustainability is tricky and like but that guy's been going since like the 90s. Just like
Yeah, which is insane to keep it sustainable through that much like upheaval. Like
right,
that's crazy.
right. It's like what is it? Spider web is like that is our American Gust or Nihon Falcom. It's just like we just like trucking along, doing what they do, making this very specific sort of thing that people like because like if
Yeah.
you can't you can't run down like AAA because they're AAA. They have hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, I don't know, if you want to make like a 70-hour RPG, go for it. Just maybe it's okay if like you take the Vampire Survivors route and use a Castlevania asset pack. Who knows?
I had the chat hidden under my Discord, but they're talking to Roger Corman. I go, oh my god, yes, we need more. Truly, Roger Corman. We need more of that philosophy of just how can we make this thing in like 3 days on $2,000? Let me call up
No,
Vince.
literally.
What was that?
No, I have nothing to say ever.
Uh,
I was just saying, like that like shoestring philosophy of just like we're gonna get it done, and done is better than anything else,
yes,
and it's fine. It's fine. It
right.
doesn't have to be more than that.
There are probably more people talking about like those Poe Corman movies than there are like the blockbusters of those eras in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
Like,
and I think that's really visible in like the way you see film discovery happening now, where we've reached the point of being so saturated with polish that, the interest is turning back towards like art house films and like stuff that people made with costumes put together from their closet, because ultimately that level of human interaction with the process is always going to be more interesting.
right. It's why people like bad art more than like good art in a lot of times because you know, for you see the humanity in mediocrity.
Oh yeah, it's like what is it like most art is mediocre, right? Like the
Yeah,
majority of human art is mediocre, but if you pull anything from it, that is still a valid experience and human exchange between the artist and the participant.
right, right. That's it's what I love is when I see people's weird little eccentricities or just like right starring, directed, produced, written by is like a true blessing on any film.
Exactly.
For
Yeah,
better,
I just like I want to see people's like weird little I don't know, there was a YouTube video of a dude making a game using only what he could draw on, like a post-it note.
yeah.
Just like more of that. Like anything that brings down your scope and pushes it into that realm of I can get this done in under a month.
Right, right. And then like but then nostalgia rears its ugly head and then like that's I think that's nostalgia you bring up it's a perfect thing because like so much nostalgia driven work feels like you're just recreating the things that you like but very mechanically, you know.
I guess it's interesting to see so much of it in games because they are still so young. Like
Yeah.
people talk about, the industry, but what is the industry? What has actually been established? I mean, how long have games actually even been like widespread as a consumer item? And
Right.
so it's like to talk about it as something that's entrenched, something that has like a legacy and not still just be going like full steam ahead of how far can we push this? What directions can we take this in? Is baffling to me and also a problem that seems uniquely rooted to games.
Right. I think there's that technical side of it too, where it's like you're people. It's like recreating a problem, or solving like how you make a quote unquote good platformer. It's like this kind of idea of linear progression and borrowing ideas makes for, and it doesn't always get remixed. I think into like how do I say it? It feels like ideas are borrowed and not they're not inspirations. If that's not the cleanest way I want to say it, but I think hopefully it gets the idea across.
Oh
Like,
yeah, entirely.
uh,
It becomes about efficiency when you're
yeah,
trying to replicate something that you are most familiar with.
right,
And we have much more of an established canon of that when it comes to other mediums, much less so with games. So much of the information around them is still decentralized, hence like Unity's popularity as an engine. It's just well documented. If you need a
yeah.
problem, someone's probably solved that problem before.
I think the perfect example that I use for this that I think is also the easiest to get across to people is like Star Wars. You know, uh,
Mm-mm.
when you watch Star Wars, like what's that movie called? A New Hope. You see that Lucas likes old serials and he likes, Kurosawa movies and just like other. You see all those weird, disparate influences of things he likes. If you watch new Star Wars, you'd be like, they like Star Wars, uh, and that's kind of like. I think games are rotten with that kind of mentality. You know,
Oh
like
yeah, no, definitely. It's so easy to see like the same few central influences that things pull from, like the way that you've had the resurgence of the Souls-like genre, not resurgence, just
right,
constant popularity of the Souls-like genre. But it really doesn't deviate from like the core imagery around it. It's all derivative of the
right.
source material, despite the fact that you could take those mechanics in almost any direction.
Right, right. You don't wonder why, and like even those are like that was from Soft's like aesthetic for like 20 or 15 years or whatever before Dark Souls was made. That's the kind of stuff they were already making, and like the visual language they were trading in, that the kind of like dark Western fantasy. And it is the thing, like when you dilute a dilution, it's like you don't know why you're doing it anymore, and it feels empty.
No, yeah, entirely. And I think that that's like one of my primary fears around like AI's presence in
Yeah.
dev is even less so like practical implementation of it, and more so the fact that when you are pulling from that same subset of influences, you are going to sort of really create a median of visualization. Just like it's all going to be referencing the same thing, and that's kind of already a problem. So,
Yes.
like, what does that look like when you exacerbate it with a tool that makes it even easier?
Right, right. Let a tool iterate. Make it like Mario or whatever. Uh, what a. But speaking of, we're actually approaching the end of. Believe it or not, we're approaching the end of our time here, and I forgot to ask. We alluded to Matchbox a couple times. One might presume it's horror based, but if people are unfamiliar with Matchbox, what is Matchbox?
So, Matchbox was a game made in Game Boy Studio that I threw together last Halloween for a local jam and showcase that we ran here in Chicago. And the entire game takes place within a coffin after you've been buried alive. And it is sort of my very short love letter to point and click games. They are my first love in games, and I'll eventually always tie stuff back to them.
Yeah.
But yeah, at the time, I love horror. I think that horror, I understand the appeal of horror games and simultaneously think we can branch out a lot more with the themes that we explore in them.
I would
I
say
think that,
they don't have to be PS1 graphics where you're collecting things and a scary guy chases you.
I think that maybe that's not the height of where we can take things
Right.
as much as I love them. But
Uh,
it is just like
I'm
horror
universe.
is built.
I'm waiting for someone to convince me that one of those games is enjoyable.
I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that horror is at its most compelling when it chooses to engage with deeply challenging subject matter. And I
Right.
think that that's a problem that games tend to avoid. Games have a very specific subset of subject matter that they choose to engage with. And usually that means like specific portions of mental health or like grief. And that's about it. And admittedly, Matchbox was built from a place of grief. I largely I lost my dad in September of last year, and so I was very much still processing when I was making this, and I've dealt with recurring nightmares since I was a child, and I was just like feeling pressed for any kind of inspiration as to what to make. And I was like, we'll just run with the shit that I'm dreaming about night to
Right.
night. It's fine. Um, and I think more important than even the subject matter was just allowing myself to have that vulnerability because I do think it gave myself a much better idea of where I would like to take working with horror in games and what I want to see in it more because it's rooted in like human weakness. It's rooted in just our what we find challenging on a personal level.
Right.
And I just don't know if Slender Man is the best embodiment of that all the time.
No, no, it is. It feels very abstracted, and like as someone who also deeply enjoys horror, I also, it is. It is. I am not usually just like it's. There's usually something going on there, to put it in the simplest terms. It's not
Yeah,
just
like I
like a
watched
scary guy.
yeah, have you watched did you watch Smile?
No, I have not.
It came out like what, 2 years ago. I highly recommend it. You don't even think it's a monster movie for most of it, to throw out a small spoiler, until
Right.
they do start getting into it more. Fantastic design. But on top of that, was genuinely terrifying in a way that really forced you to sit with it. And that's really where the horror stems from in it, is the way it forces you to just spend time with some deeply uncomfortable scenes.
Yeah.
And I think that in a lot of ways, that tension, that time is something that games tend to not allot themselves. And I think that was pretty much like my guiding thought behind it was wanting to create a space where you can't move, where you are forced to sit in this environment, in this single space, and sit with like the thought and feeling
Right.
of, well, just the setting.
So often horror is not like actively threatening. Like, you know, if that make the antagonist, so to speak, is not such an active threat. In it feels like games go think like, oh, slasher is horror. Uh, those are one and the same.
Yeah, often mistaking like the age-old thing of mistaking suspense for horror.
Right.
I forget who I heard this from originally, but it was like the idea that terror is the moment and what comes after, and horror is the entirety of the buildup.
Yeah.
And that's kind of something I hope to, I think, bring into my work in the future. I would love to approach a slightly more long form horror game.
But yes, I have a little thing kicking around in my brain that I'd want to make eventually, but time. But
It's always time.
speaking of time, as I mentioned, we were running out of it. We have two more questions here. The kind of Indiepocalypse radio standbys that I think they're my litmus test for people. First question: what's your favorite type of rock?
Oh, damn, that's a hard one. Shit. Okay, I don't know if this counts. Big fan of silt, just like running your hands over like a riverbed, or like the shore of like a little rocky beach. Don't know if that counts, but it's
Is
what I'm gonna
silt
go
a
with.
rock? Let's find out. I'm not gonna look it up. I'm gonna say yes. Close enough. Oh, it's detritus. It's the detritus of rock. Whatever. Close enough.
It's
Um,
rock adjacent.
yeah. Follow up question: uh, do you have a favorite Toho character?
Okay, I do know what Toho is. I've played like one Toho game, and it was the cooking one that came out a few years ago, and I don't remember any of the characters' names.
The Izakaya one with where you're like the crow.
Yes.
I played a lot of that too. I I I would say that's actually weirdly like a, if you remember the characters, probably a good intro because there's like a lot of them in it.
Yeah, it was overwhelming.
Yes, that
Someone who was unfamiliar with it before that.
I guess it could be. I guess it could go either way. Maybe it's too many characters, or maybe it's just enough. Yeah, there's a lot of them. They're cool little. They're cool little foot. Oh, there's a little asterisk next to it. I don't know what that means. Anyway, off
I
topic
do
review.
love the attitude of it though. The
Yes,
attitude of like just we're gonna all make games within this shared universe. That's delightful to me.
yes. A guy who being like, I made this thing. Also, anyone can use it if they want. I don't really care.
Oh,
Like,
it's beautiful.
it's like no need to be so precious about your IP. I cannot take. I don't. Questionable if I can take someone who uses the term intellectual property seriously. But anyway,
When can we expect the Indiepocalypse IP to launch?
soon. I mean, I did mildly have something for my like tape club where I was like, they wrote Indie Apocalypse on. I'm like, technically, I guess it's not an Indie Apocalypse thing, so it shouldn't say Indie Apocalypse on it. But also, both Indie Apocalypse and Pizza Pranks are literally just me and their words that I made up. So who knows? But they changed it to that. I'll talk about Tape Club. Those things are cool, folks. You should get on those, I think, if you're out there listening. But otherwise, we're going to go on break. Thank you for joining me here on the show. I hope you will. I have too many windows. Stick around for the group seg. But in the meantime, goodbye, everyone, for about a minute, give or take. Bye for now. Going back to Indie Apocalypse Radio, that was Samir Sanders with Nightmare Glass. We are here with our next guest, also from issue 48 of Indie Apocalypse, with now, oh, I've never said it out loud, R00000. I'm realizing, like, is that how you pronounce it? Well, I'll ask them in a second. It is, we have Povilas, Carolus, and Ignas, who are collectively Weekend Warriors. Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello. Can we get a sound off for the chat with your name just to help distinguish for the listening audience?
Okay, so I'm Carlos. I'm the programmer.
My name is Povilas, and I'm the creative lead and the art director.
I'm Ignas. I am the sound designer.
Perfect. Welcome all to the show. First off, important question you got to get out of the gate. How did you hear about Indiepocalypse?
Well, for me, it's quite hard to remember, but I think definitely through itch.io.
Okay.
Uh, at some point, I probably just stumbled upon one of your collections and saw it as a very interesting opportunity for smaller developers to showcase their work. So I really cannot remake the full origin story of the finding, but definitely through itch.io.
Okay. No worry. It's mostly just an informal marketing survey for me. So I go, how do I get more people to hear? How can I get more creators to hear about it? Where are they finding it? So that,
Yeah, but also
yeah.
maybe there could be a connection to Kush Comics because, for example, that's a household name in our region, and there could have been some sort of like a social media connection to
Yeah.
this as well.
They do share it over there a lot, so much thanks to them. I need to remember to get on the show. I remember that. That's my own mental survey for now. But yes, no, that is. I am trying to. I like to connect with different kind of like small press, independent art communities and like organizations where I can around the world, and they are one of them. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, just a small note. Most probably you have heard about this, but there's a maze festival in Berlin happening every
yes,
year, and that could be also a very great connection for Indiepocalypse. I believe so.
I have given not real talks. I've given what's the word I'm
Okay.
looking for? Like when you sign up and then you let you do the first come first serve talks. Maybe I should
Mhm.
submit to do like a proper. But also, traveling to Berlin is expensive for me, so going there, tricky. But of the big festivals, Amaze does seem most in line generally with like what I do.
We also have up and coming festival in Lithuania, both for video games but also for animation. It's um, it's a joint venture, let's say,
Yeah,
to attract more people, and it's called Blon, Blon, and it's happening also every year. And the video game scene is growing bit by bit in that kind of festival. So just uh, we will be able to send you the link afterwards. So just to keep that in mind. So
oh, I've already found it and added it to my little favorite section of things to my things to remember folder.
yeah, I really believe that even the festival itself would be interested to have Indiepocalypse as a some sort of like a collaborator or even just a host of a lecture even online. That they are quite let's say uh, they they're interested in creators from all over the world. So
Yeah,
I think it would be an easy connection.
yeah, I've done. Oh, I'm trying to remember the exact. I've curated like a game section for like an arts festival in where was it? Now I'm blanking on every part of it. For Overkill, which is where exactly is Overkill? Somewhere in sort of towards northeastern Europe, in the Netherlands region, I believe. Yeah, okay,
Mhm.
yeah, it is in Netherlands. And I had curated like game sections for them a couple of times in the past. And
Mhm.
it's definitely like there are more like games are more trickling slowly into the arts field, and just like crossing over with like an animation film festival, and or more film festivals are starting to include games as well.
Yeah, I guess that's the case with the Lawn Festival. It's a small film festival that's doing a game section now, and I think they're like just seeing what sticks, because I think they've only done it like for 2 years,
Right.
so it's still forming.
And it creates like a different like venue for games, compared to most like game shows are very like commercial focused kind of events, where there's like large number of companies, and or like large companies rather, and they're all like very, it feels like an industry, they're still like industry trade shows more than they are whatchamacallit, like art festivals.
Yeah, I guess like as you talked previously in the previous section of this show, but I guess there is like more prestige attached to films,
Yeah.
so it's easier to, like, bootstrap the festival to a game festival to an already existing film festival. Maybe that's a good way to go ahead.
Right. Just
Also,
get,
there's some desire to always compare movies and games for some reason.
right. I guess because they're prestigious and you can look at them, kind of like games. They have that, because I guess, is that the only shared language, that they're both mediums that you can look at. Like it feels very tenuous a connection. Uh, but
Yeah, but also I guess like it might be some part that like earlier maybe games or maybe even current ones, like I guess like Kojima games are really film influence, and now he's like casting all these actors.
right,
But
right. And
they're like,
he's such a weird specific case even as well, because it's like he makes his own very specific kind of strange game. Like it feels like influenced by film, and it emulates film in some ways, but it also like it very much embraces being a video game, and like what that medium does differently. They're very weird things. It's like strange outliers for like those AAA budgets.
yeah, but I mean that's a good case. I think there's like
Yeah.
another game designer. I think he's David Cage, the guy who made Fahrenheit and Heavy Rain.
Yeah.
And those are also movie influenced, but they're like really hand-holding experiences, basically like interactive movies, and
Right,
they
right.
don't work as well as the Metal Gear Solid ones.
Right, because they're like, why is this a video game? Like the video game portion feels like maybe they didn't want to, or no, because they want the choice. Choices are very important in video games. That I'm a active participant, or or whatever. That
Yeah,
idea.
but I liked personally like Fahrenheit, like the first scene,
Yeah.
because like you're the killer and you have to like hide your crime.
Right,
And I don't
right.
know, like it works basically.
There are interesting portions of those games, I think. Uh, but but enough about David Cage. I gotta tell me about, if someone's unfamiliar with your game. What would you say it is exactly? How would you describe it? Let me know about it.
Well, at the beginning, you've tried to pronounce the name,
Yeah.
and we internally have found an easier way to pronounce the game. It's R with 5 zeros.
Okay.
For us, it makes sense. For others, it could be hard to see that, but it's a lot easier than to try to remember how many zeros there have to be. But basically, the game is it was started during Global Game Jam of the last year, and we started with a small idea that we are now partly working from a basement studio, and we have a this strange corridor leading to the studio, and the corridor is old and crampy, and we thought that we could use that space for some sort of a game, and as an enclosed and small space, and in order to skip the, let's say, long and tedious making of the 3D space and and creating those assets, we thought that we can skip it by photographing the area by with a 360-degree camera, and making the game in some way which could which could resemble a Google Maps, let's say, street view
Yeah.
viewing angle. So that was the idea, to make our game easier by using those photographs. So that was the beginning for us, just this small idea, and we started to work on it through during the game jam, and we decided to work with the idea after the jam. But so in general, it turned out to be a short horror story, which is let's say, which is based in a real life location in our own, uh, let's say, corridor of our own basement, and later we were influenced by many other ideas and influences, uh, like psychological problems, movies, and DIY movies, and for example, some of us remembered the Vice documentary about the worst movies ever made. There's I think a series of YouTube videos. Um, I cannot make now the exact name of the series of those videos, but there was this specific man who was very keen in making monster movies, and I think he was well over middle aged. He was still living with his parents, and he used to make his parents star in his movies, and he was very passionate about the whole business of movie making, and especially monster movie making, and we thought that it would be interesting to use this backstory for let's say our character, and make the game about a person who enters the basement and tries to film a scary picture, but as he is remaking his, let's say, as he wants to remake the scenes, he gets uh, more and more frustrated, and due to his, let's say, psychological um, status, and he gets into this never-ending loop, which is getting worse and worse and worse. So and then the player has some choices to let's say to fight those psychological problems in some kind of way, or to let them overflow the the player and the person who the player is playing to. So that would be, let's say, some general thoughts
Yeah.
about the game.
It's like it's I did not do this intentionally of scheduling two guests who made horror movies about cramped enclosed spaces and navigating them, but and it's at some aspect, horror. I wonder how much that has come up as horror reflecting our horror tends to reflect our times in a lot of you can see it in a lot of places, and I wonder if there is a reason why some of us would be thinking a lot about a single enclosed space recently. Who knows? But no, that is like, and it has like, how do I? That like the idea of, I'm fascinated by the idea of why model this space that we already have. And it's like it's a we were talking about in that first segment. It's the practical answer to like getting something made of just, well, here are the restraints we have, here are the tools we have, and then just kind of like working forward from those like that sort of like crunchy recording aesthetic. I'm sure was partially informed by the fact that you were using, your 360 camera and you had live footage and that sort of thing. Like all these choices inform other choices, which inform other choices, and it's kind of like what's what I'm looking for, an endless flow, or it just feeds back into itself in a positive way.
Yeah, we actually, when we started to work, we saw some sort of let's say, at least for the design part of the game, for me as a designer, something clicked when I thought about that. Let's say, okay, let's skip the modeling and let's do the 360-degree photographs. Let's pixelate them and put them straight into the game. And after we started to embrace this idea, at least from design perspective, to try to make everything as easy as possible, yet retaining the overarching, let's say, design of the game. And I started to take to film various places around, let's say, in and around my life. For example, the radio, which is visible at the beginning and at the end of the game, is just recorded video from my car's radio. Some of the let's say video and some of the points in the game are just filmed or photographed near where we live. So we started to embrace this this thing, which we later started to call non-binding game design.
Yeah.
It's like this, let's say, let's make it all as easy as possible for us. So, and just if anyone would be interested, we had an opportunity to make a small, let's say, a lecture about it. So on our YouTube, we have this, like, if anyone would be interested to see what kind of picture was taken originally and how it looks in the game, that we have some, like a video on YouTube about this. So it's possible to take a look, like a deeper look
Right.
into the game.
Yeah, because film, and just like, especially with, how good phone cameras are nowadays, like a lot more can be done with just like film and photography than you think, and a lot of it is easier to do. Like if anyone's looking at the stream currently, the little spinning tape I have on there, that little asset there is, I mean, I made that in my house with my I recorded that on my phone, and without a green screen, it took me even like 20-30 minutes to make that GIF just out of spinning a tape in real life. And there is like, if you commit to the full aesthetic of it, there's a lot of like, truly nature is the ultimate asset flip or whatever. Like,
yeah, it's very interesting that your we also have a tape spinning.
Yeah, right. Yes, we've got two
for us.
spinning tapes.
And it's actually a real, like, we photographed a real tape, and then just mapped it on a very simplistic 3D model, which is basically like a rectangle with one angle just a little bit pushed to the side. So uh, it's a real tape, just also pixelated. So
Yeah.
we embraced that idea as well.
Right. Like, you know, we're not, none of us are all sitting around with $1 million budgets, you know. We're, embrace the constraints and not, not spend, this is it goes from a global game jam project into a full project in like, what, like a year's time, give or take, maybe a little less.
Yeah, it took us half a year from game jam version to like a paid Steam version.
Right, right. And that's just like, that's like an ideal model that like artists should be working in. Like, if you're an independent artist with no budget, you should probably think about like working in under a year maximum.
Yeah, but also you mentioned about the low budget being like inspired by nature and surrounding
Yeah.
items. But like high end, I think now art is also like photogrammetry scanned items with
Right,
like
right.
lots of voxels or vertices, and then it's also like the really low end and the really high end also like use photographs for textures and meshes.
It's just the high end. They got way more triangles on those polygons.
Yeah.
And it creates like that extra workload. But it's like you can cut the corners where you can. That's what corners are meant for.
Also, in this like this
Yeah.
or maybe it's last year at the Maze, I saw like a lot of people doing like 3D scans with their like iPads and converting them to like game levels.
Yeah, right. There's a friend of the show. Was it Last Amaze? I can't remember. The audience award winner. What's it? The audience?
Was it Leander or
No, I'm thinking Titanic
Lawrence?
2. Uh,
uh,
I forget what
how-
year that was, and I forget what the exact what the name of the exact. I keep typing in the wrong words. But Titanic
was it
2.
the game with like the head, like where the controller is a mannequin head, or
No, no, it was. It's like how to describe Titanic 2.
oh, okay, I've
Yeah.
played it. Does it have? I've only played like the start of the demo, but does it have like 3D scanned things or?
No, it reuses a lot of it. It kind of falls into the, I like the term plunder core, which is like it quote unquote borrows a lot of assets and like reframes them. So like there's like Mario hanging out in there. But
Oh yeah, yeah. It has like I think SpongeBob maybe even.
yeah, and it
If I'm
and it
not wrong.
uses the Titanic song "My Heart Will Go On," but like truly a blown
Clipping.
up version of it, and it is for people I've been asked fairly recently about for a different project about like, hey, can this game uses songs that we didn't make, and it's like it's important that it like gets meaningfully like recontextualized and like remade and that sort of stuff. And like
You're just not supposed to use Nintendo stuff, I think.
right, and you have to just use or are you using it like in a way that it's so diverged from the original intent that is like no longer Mario in a way.
Yeah, but I guess in a way, I mean, the fear is that not yet that you're like legally
Right,
right,
yes.
but I mean, you're gonna get like law. I mean, the one who wins is the one who has more money for lawyers in the end.
Yes, that's the truly the fear of it. That's why I say, hey, don't worry about it. It's free. Or what I tell people is, Indiepocalypse is never big enough that anyone will ever bust me because no one will care, which is a weird plus side. I don't think I'm ever gonna get narked on by Games Press, as they tend to inadvertently do when they go check out this cool fan game.
Yeah.
But
But at least like I saw the one there was this Bloodborne card. At least he
Yes.
got permission to just change the team or the name or something, but he can still continue with the project.
Right. That's a little weirder one for me because that feels like it's more trading on the fact that it's called Bloodborne than anything else. But it's still a cool looking thing. Um, but that aside, but speaking of things, we are we are actually approaching the end of this segment here. So we've you've had some time to prepare. Now I gotta know, um, what's your favorite type of rock?
I mean, we're collectively thinking,
Yes,
and
yes.
no one wants to take the microphone, so I'm just passing it around.
You can answer individually. You can answer collectively. You can have a group decision, a consensus, or
We are trying to think about any kind of rock names that we would know of.
Okay, my favorite rock is the one where you go to the Wikipedia page and the parents of the artist are in blue.
yes, that
If
is
it-
that. Oh, indie rock. I do like indie rock.
Yeah.
That's a common refrain on the show of that specific type of that. Yeah, but and now follow up question: do you have a favorite Toho character? And this is a do question, so the answer, a perfectly acceptable answer for this is no.
Okay, so when you talked with Wormfood,
Yeah.
we had to Google it.
Yes,
So
that's the common action of the second guest.
yeah, it's we don't have one.
No,
I
that's
think.
perfectly fine. Uh, but but that is um thank you all for being here. Povolas, Carolus, Ignas, thank you all for being on the show. I mean, you're going to be back very soon because this second break, this is not very long either. But thank you for being on the show. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for making games. Thanks for all the things that I feel. I like to, there's too many things generally to thank guests for. But thanks for hanging out.
Yeah, we had a pleasure talking to you.
Uh, we will be back in roughly 1 minute and 38 seconds. Bye for now. Welcome back to
Yeah.
Indiepocalypse Radio. That was Printhead with Dying the Way You Want. We're back with our guests, Weekend Warriors and Worm Food. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
I interrupted people.
Hello.
We were talking about Bandcamp. Is Bandcamp still cool? Maybe. For now, probably. But it's kind of one of those things
Put your
of...
games music on Bandcamp.
Yes.
Everyone should.
Right. It's one of those things where if you got all those eggs, put them in a couple different baskets. Think about that. Put them on your own website. Just get a website. Put your music on it.
I love the trend of games being used as like visualizers at live shows.
Yeah.
And I just want to see like more intersection between independent musicians and developers. I just think it's a really, really fun way to sort of rope two things that are kind of historically apart from each other into the same space.
Oh. Have you
I
seen...
think there's like a Radiohead album that's sort of similar, isn't it? Like
It's like a
Kid Amnesia.
game. Yeah. But
I know one artist who actually like ventured into video game medium from like traditional art just because of that one album.
It's cool.
I forget what
Yeah,
it's
I haven't
called.
looked into their kid anything.
Yeah.
I think it's called Kid Amnesia.
Yes, because it's
Yeah.
it's like with that kind of like re-release sort of Kid A thing, amnesiac thing they did. But is it VR? In my mind, it's VR, and I don't have anything that does VR, or I don't have a VR
I
to
don't
do.
think it's VR. I only watched like a walkthrough video, but I don't think it's VR.
Oh, maybe I should get it because I think it's free. Anyway.
It's free if you sign up to the Epic Game Store.
I don't
Okay.
think it's VR. I think you're good.
I think I'm good. Huh. I can just play. That does sound. Like that did sound cool, but it. Do I want to be the guy who's like, yeah, I played the Radiohead visual? I'm like, yeah.
It's a statement.
Yes.
Puts you in a certain category. Yeah, I feel you.
But also, it's probably kind of cool. It's just a safe space to say that I do like Radiohead. I think
Yeah,
they're
I'm
cool.
a Kid A apologist. I like the more synth-based stuff, especially.
I think that's one of those. Music is one of those things where, like, once you get far enough, you can have to say, like, you have to pretend that you don't like classics. I guess you know. Because
Yeah.
you have to get where you get so far extremely in your own head, you'd be like, no, I in fact will never admit to someone that I like in the airplane over the sea.
No, I'll always be a neutral milk hotel apologist. I like folk punk too
Yes,
much to
right.
just to not admit to it.
But
Sorry, I like what I like.
it is one of those things. But it's the mentality of like referring to being an apologist of a canonically classic album or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
I guess
even
I
then,
guess
like
I feel that with games.
99.9% don't know even that like that the band ever
Right,
existed.
right, exactly. So it's like you're so far up your own ass that you don't know. It's like it's like, oh, most people don't like. I got very particular about songs that I played on this show of like, I got to make sure it's hyper specific when it's like, I bet I could play like, you know, a song. I could play whatever Can't Care Flowers, and how many people on this show might, or how many listeners might go, oh, I know that song by heart, or even like, I've never heard this song before. And it's like, oh, right. People's tastes are wide and varied, you know. And the canon is not, you know, how many people have watched Jean Dielman, you know. the
I feel
our world our the medium's greatest
That's
film.
the best game. That's the best movie of all time, right? According to
Yes,
the
or
post.
the most recently. But of the people I know personally, I would put that count at 0. 1 counting myself. But apparently, greatest movie of all time. I do really like it though. I think it's actually very good. I think it's exceptional. But anyway, part of this show is also to trick people slowly into spending 3.5 hours of their life watching Jean Dielman, and I'll get people one of these days. But anyway,
what movie should I start with?
Jean Dielman. No, that's the name of the film.
Oh, okay. I have no idea. I thought we were talking about someone. I was like, wow, okay.
Oh no,
I'm way out of my base here. I'm not a film person. I can talk music all day.
The Chantal Ackerman is the director, or Chantal Ackerman. I don't know. I've never
Love.
heard her name pronounced out loud. We're talking, of course, Jean Dielman, 23 Quai de Comer, 1080 Bruxelles, a film. But anyway, it's cool. It's cool. If you like movies where nothing happens, I'm like, hell
Oh,
yeah. I love movies where nothing
those are
happens.
my favorite.
I was telling someone the other day about, he was like, My Dinner with Andre sounds like the most boring movie. I'm like, hell yeah, it is.
Oh no, that's me describing my games taste. I feel like I was obsessed with this one that came out late last year. Or I guess it's not late last year, I guess it's late 2022 at this point. Called The Immaculate Drag. And like all you can do in it, it's like a 30-minute runtime. You're a burnt out author in Miami, and all you can do is walk around, talk to people, and you have a dedicated button to smoke cigarettes, check your pack. And that's it. That's my ideal game.
Yes, that truly, games where you cannot win and nothing games are too obsessed with this idea of winning. I want more games where you can't win, but that doesn't
Exactly.
mean
Like, give me games that like don't have a definitive end state, and I just kind of have to choose to quit.
right.
Yeah, but like there's like older games like these super technical Sims, like SimCity. I think doesn't have an end game.
Right, right. And this idea, that's like a whole other thing of like, they're like, not toolboxes, but they're like, I don't know how you describe, like, describe SimCity to somebody, like, in terms of like, they're like, because there are different types of games in their own way. I
Yeah,
don't know.
it's kind of interesting now. When Carlos mentioned SimCity, now I remember that specifically city builders have this thing going on when there is no goal, just let's say purely visual or creative goal. And even recently, now there's a Steam Next Fest going on,
Yeah.
and I found about this interesting, I think, cyberpunk build city builder. It's called Dystopica, and it's just purely making a dystopian looking, uh, like, it depends on what are your preferences, but cool looking night city. So uh, just without any kind of goal, just purely visual, and maybe a relaxing goal as well.
Right.
And there are even more, like, I think there was a townscaper, like a very visualistic, and like, how to say, um, easygoing game where you're building basically some sort of like a Swedish old town in the middle of the ocean, in the middle of nowhere. So uh, I just had this idea that maybe some sort of like city builders specifically have this thing going on where there is no goal. The goal is the
Yeah.
city.
Right.
There's a really beautiful one I love in like the micro city builder genre called Islanders that was like very briefly got some press, but the whole premise is you place buildings on an island with finite space with no resources or anything. You can place them wherever you want according to their own rules. And based on placement, you generate points. But the only thing that points serve to do is fill up a meter where once it's full, you can go on to the next island. That's it. That's the whole point. And you repeat that loop just infinitely. And I have honestly put an unholy amount of hours into it.
Yeah, and I think this kind of games also relate to the ongoing theme of wholesome games, the games which, like, I guess specifically during the pandemic, during COVID, everyone around the world was, let's say, a bit like over their heads, and these kind of easygoing games came out of the blue, when usually the games have had to have some drama, shooting, or any kind of some sort of negativity going on, and there, from out of the blue, we have games just embracing calmness, embracing, like, just simple simple, um, like, a person after the whole day of work, getting emotions after, like, just
Yeah.
relaxing after, let's say, heavy work day, and by playing some sort of a wholesome game, that why not?
Right. Right. Because people have like, games to unwind is like, if you really abstract it, are like puzzles are games to unwind. uh, you know is solitaire like games to unwind. Like they tap into that same kind of like infinite play space sort of idea of like self-imposed challenges, or an absence of challenges that allows you to be like, okay, well, I don't want to stress myself out. I want to do something, and I just want to relax when I do it. And
Yeah, I just remembered a very interesting another game. It's called Wilmot's Warehouse. Maybe you've heard about
Yes.
it. So it's like when we started to talk about relaxing and letting yourself go and these, let's say, mental elements in the games. I thought that somehow just my thoughts jumped over to that game, which uh, very interestingly to me plays with the player's mind. And there is also like that relaxing moment, of course, by placing, let's say, basically you're a warehouse manager, and you're placing different kind of, let's say, elements which come to your warehouse. But to me, the most interesting thing was that you have to have a mental map of your warehouse and where each obscurely looking item is placed. And when some new items come to the warehouse, the mind starts to play games with you when some specific item which you were labeling, for example, as like let's say some sort of like a food, in the context of new items becomes something completely different.
Yeah.
And you start to place them in a very different place in the warehouse. And all that, like the game which creates kind of like a mental palace of some sorts. But yeah, I moved far away, but just wanted to shout out that it's a great game to unwind, but also a very interesting play with player's mind.
Right. Because uh, puzzle games are often kind of like unlocking sort of like this sort of way of thinking. Like it's like you're getting your mind into the specific rule set that exists within that kind of world. Uh, and then you have to right. I'm as someone unfamiliar, or like I'm just looking at the screenshots of Wilmot's Warehouse. I'm like, oh right, yes, I get what you're saying. Like I can see how those ideas get across, but I'm also at the same time, were I in the middle of those ideas, I don't think it would be the same. Like there's that irremovable participant part of games, you know, because we're never going to, like, people are not always just going to approach something the exact same way and have the same kind of experience, and the same, like in that case, like your mental filing system, it might be a little different, or you might try to pre-plan, or who knows, or what. But
I mean,
yeah,
no, sorry, just to jump in, I do think that that's also what makes puzzles a great example of like group play,
yeah,
because I think we tend to think of them as like solitary, but in reality, it's what lends itself so well towards like a bit of like backseat gaming if you're like streaming it, or if you have people in the room with you who are watching what you're doing. And it's interesting how like that seems to develop pretty naturally.
right. Nothing is a better hint to a puzzle than someone who has never seen it before.
Yeah.
And who is like doesn't exist within your head. And I th- I th- I think games can be also like more participatory, like the idea of like participatory single player games. There's more to that. Not even just like what's the word, like this the class, the now modern sort of reaction style, like I am there with you. But like even in a room, like it's fun to play single player games in a room together. You create your own sort of like rule sets, or like games that have like malleable rule sets that can be placed onto them that don't exist within the game. Of what?
It's when you have a player in Smash who's an AI and
Yeah.
you all start to villainize him
Yes.
because he's doing really well.
Right. We built our own narratives and game sets. I played Smash with a steering wheel once because that was the only controller that was. They didn't have four controllers, but they
Yeah,
had.
I guess for me it was like Sims and GTA games, like the
Yeah.
3D. Like you like some kid is like just driving the car and others are telling what to do, basically.
We for
But it's like sandbox styles games, like as I said, like GTA or Sims were like really good for these house rules.
Yes, we for the last years, probably maybe even years of its lifespan of us playing it. Halo 2 was a racing game where we had tracks that we would go across, and there was nary a gun to be shot. And that was just like, you create your own concept of rules, or uh, like what, and that's kind of like, we have whole genres built out of mods, and ultimately, in a lot of ways, that's what game modding is taking this playset and making your own thing out of that. And
Yeah, I think like you've got big games from that, like Dota or League of Legends, like
yes,
that
right,
whole
right.
e-game thing is just a mod basically.
Right, the largest game in the world is an old StarCraft mod. Still, very weird to think of it like that. Or is it the largest still, or that's probably like Roblox, or no, wait, Fortnite.
Maybe Fortnite. I'm
Yeah,
not sure. I haven't really played these esport games
right,
after League of
right.
Legends.
There is that weird kind of like this whole space of games that is like the most expensive games in the largest games in the world, and not.
Yeah, but then also like I'm now thinking that even like these competitive shooter
Yeah,
esports are also mods because it was like Counter-Strike was a mod of Half-Life 1.
right, and Fortnite just comes out of what's it called, Player Unknowns,
PUBG.
which in
Yeah, player.
Player
Unknowns,
Unknowns
yeah.
is just what that was DayZ. Was that DayZ? Or no, or was that Arma? What was Player
Maybe
Unknown?
Arma. I'm thinking Arma actually.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it was Arma.
I
Arma
think
spawned a lot of stuff on its own.
right. I think my thing is DayZ is also on Arma, right? I think that's where I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah, Arma itself, right? Oh no, it is. Uh, okay, no, you're right. It was inspired by DayZ, which is itself an Arma, and Player Unknown is an Arma mod. Arma, what a weird thing, Just
But maybe it's also kind of a natural thing for let's say an artistic field of
yeah,
for an artistic field, like in literature we have like you cannot write a book without let's say knowing other authors before you, and because they influence the author's writing, and in every novel we take, we can see some kind of bits and pieces they took from Shakespeare and or from the Bible, or other, let's say, when we talk about the grand schemes of the books. So there's a really, I think even the games also should have this kind of a natural progression where some parts are taken from one and another, and they become something new, and that something new at some point will become uh, a, a starting point for another project and another project, and maybe that's quite a healthy natural thing for an art field to evolve in this kind of way.
yeah. It's interesting that you don't see it our games. I think because they're so strict. There's such the emphasis on genre. You don't have like the same like broader stroke like naming of movements in like you don't talk about like cubism in games, so to speak, or like
Maybe not yet.
right. We're like games
But I
aren't.
think like PS1 nostalgia games, or maybe like there was this like Cruelty Squad sort of style. I think it's called like Memphis Maximalism now.
Yeah,
I think these are movements actually.
right.
Like these because there's more like especially like during this Steam Next Fest and then like maybe last year I saw like a lot of these anti-capitalist Cruelty Squads type of games
Right.
coming out.
You're only
There's
recently
like this
starting to see like things that don't describe the gameplay style. but like the themes and the stylistic approach. But that they could some be first person shooters, some could be like city builders.
Yeah, but there's also like I read like there's this extremely long essay about I forget how the blog is named. I think it's Ella something, and then it's about these movements of indie games, like these waves where like that like the first indie games were basically games that had like one mechanic done really well,
Right.
and then it was done at a time when games did like mainstream games made lots of mechanics, but now indie games have moved after like away from this one core mechanic to like just vibes basically. And that
Yes.
there's also like
I I think is that California problem essay? Is that the one you're thinking of?
yes, that's the
Yes.
one. It's
It was
really long.
Eligoro.
Yeah.
Yes. It is very it is very long, but it's also worth a read. Just like
Yeah, I like because I also came after the initial wave of indies like to this world, so
yeah.
it was interesting to see like the evolution and the thought behind like game jams and all those like first wave indie games.
Right. Even game jams feel like they're increasingly like changing over years, you know. Like a lot of okay, it's not as long as I thought it was. I accidentally scrolled past it. There were two articles on the front page, but it is still pretty long, but also still worth it.
Yeah,
You know?
but I think they're longer because also like Googled it again like a couple of weeks ago. I think there's like this button where you expand it.
Oh, maybe there is. Maybe I'm. Yes, there is a read more button. You're right. I thought it
Yeah,
was
it's
longer.
based like it's probably like 10 or 20,000 words. It's quite long.
Yes, but it's a
It's a worth read.
Yes.
I highly recommend it.
there are yeah.
Uh,
There's oh my God. It
It's
is
called the Allegro California problem, right?
yes yeah. If you search Eligoro, yeah, and is you go to the blog spot page. It's yeah, or I think you probably search California problem. Either way, there's a lot. There's a lot there. Um, but it's definitely worth a long read. Is there a anyway? I was doing what's the word I'm looking for? I was doing clerical work for a moment there, but yes, yeah, because there's a lot of, and I think part of the reason people often don't see this wide picture of games is that whether it's developers or critics or you know a lot of people burn out of games very quickly, so you don't have like you know that old the old guard of video games because they've been it hasn't been sustainable, so they can't last more than 5 or 10 years, if that. So critical voices turn over very quickly. Development voices, especially like in the indie space, turn over very quickly.
It's like if you're an old head in game dev, you are almost absolutely doing it like for your own career and
Right.
don't tend to engage as much with a younger audience who might be trying to push more experimental stuff.
Right.
I
Or
see a lot. Yeah.
you're like you're very chances are you're in a stable AAA job or whatever, and
hmm
and that like that kind of person doesn't interact with the indie experimental space as much.
And it ties back to the Dojin scene, like
Yeah.
the idea that it's only just like making it, or just you only do game jams, and there's like no in between.
Right. Right. And there should be like you know, I say obviously there should be a healthier in between space, you know, where like it's like okay, I don't have to stress about like this being my day job and being my everything, but it can be, but also not my side gig. It's a hobby. Hobby.
Yeah, because like it's the way even that like funding for games is looked at as only in large amounts. But
Right.
like, what does micro funding for games look like? Because realistically, if you pay for someone to put up their game on Steam when they don't have a spare $100,
Yeah.
That's still huge. That's still huge. That still can be the make or break for someone who's operating on that lower end.
Right. That is, the Indiepocalypse commission budget is very small. It is it is a little bit above that $100, but not much. Um, but that's the same philosophy where I'm like, here's the money. You have for 3 months to make a game. That's it. I explicitly say, do not spend 3 months making a game. Think of it as like something you make in a weekend or something. But I mean, invariably, people are going to spend more than that. You can't stop them. But the philosophy of you should be able to fund short works.
Yeah, but there's like now I think especially like itch, but there's and Patreon, but
Yeah,
there's like Sock Pop Collective that Pavlos showed me, but it's like a studio that make a game a month, I think.
yeah.
And they're like
Sock Pop's incredibly cool.
Yeah, Puncake does that. Puncake is more recent, who do the same thing. Puncake Delicious. I don't know how to say that second part there. But that is a similar, like, here's a monthly project, and they do sustainable monthly projects, and sometimes they have like bigger hits now and then too. But that's that same kind of like small, sustainable one game a month, split across multiple team members, so you can like do work.
What's the name of this collective?
The one I just
can
mentioned?
drop it in the chat.
Yes, that's the one.
Yep.
Or
Yeah,
Punk
I
Cake.
really like
Punk,
some.
I always forget is Punk Cake.
Because it's like, yeah, I mean, to that point, it's like the whole fixation on studios, right?
Right.
Like studios specifically as the language, but what does collective look like? What does a game dev collective function as? And how
Right.
is that more sustainable?
we call ourselves a collective actually.
Yeah.
That's so cool. I love that.
Or like, what is the game dev like? Shared studio space style, like this quote unquote studio that shares space, but is a bunch of independent artists making their own thing.
Isn't that
Yeah,
like
and
how sorry to interrupt, but like how Neutral Milk Hotel actually operated?
Yeah,
Because I think they were actually a collective.
right.
And
What was it?
then
Elephant Six.
yeah,
Elephant
yeah,
Six,
and
yeah, you had a lot of crossover.
So
yeah,
you get
just one of the labels, like that name.
It's a way that like game devs can take additional notes from, I think, from other artistic practices, that sense of like cross collaboration. And I mean, like Toho, like if you do want to, as an example, if you do want to develop like a consistent IP, what does that look like spread between multiple people with you using the same characters, the same established imagery,
right.
but spread out to create that sense of a shared universe or space, if that's the direction you want to go.
Yeah, there's oh no, I'm very lame dimension. Um, is like it works in that similar thing where there's like, I don't know, like 20 people in lame dimension or something. There's a ton of them. But they do another like make a bunch of varied games in like a shared universe sort of thing. They're also very cool. And worth checking out.
There was also an interesting like you have probably heard about Night in the Woods. It's so I heard that they were like, at least I'm not sure whether it was during the Night in the Woods development or after it. They collaborated into the Glory Society, and they named themselves as a worker cooperative. I
Yeah,
think
they were the first one that I knew about that did that.
some sort of like there was nobody was a boss, and they all shared the same, let's say, responsibilities or something like that. But like, unfortunately, they were not able to finish their second project due to some other problems. I think that was like health problems of some of the team, but that was an interesting, maybe like an experiment in the field where there's always a hierarchy, always like a boss and his workers and so on.
Oh, I didn't. I'm up on games news. I did not know that they had stopped.
Yeah, I think it was like Scott Benson having health issues last I
Right.
heard. Just that prevented it from moving forward in any conceivable way. Especially because I think Glory Society was like 3 people
Right.
all told. It was not big.
Right. And that's part of that helps to be small. Uh, but there is, yeah, there, the idea of just kind of like I'm big on this idea of loosely affiliated people. My goal is to create more people who are loosely affiliated associates or whatever the term is. The kind of like, what's that term when someone you see at a con and you're like, hey, what's up? Great to hang out, and then you don't see them until the next con. Um, but
Yeah.
it's kind of like it's kind of very even looser than a collective, or a cooperative. Like just
Yeah, in our case,
yeah,
we called ourselves collective because we had no like a legal status, but at the same time we worked on various game jams and other like game related projects with a wide range of people of all sorts of creatives, and the idea was just to have this let's say uh, like um, like a general go-to name under which a lot of different people can create and work.
right.
So that was our approach because during specific times or specific projects have different teams. So we thought that like a collective could mean like a collective of people who are interested in the same goals or in the same kind of project.
Yeah, much like you aforementioned rock music with blue Wikipedia page parents. I'm a big fan of the style with 80,000 associated arcs or 80,000 associated acts or like 27 past members. Uh, just like
Yeah.
the
Okay, but I mean, this could also be like dad rock bands that have like these farewell tours that last 50 years or something.
right,
They
right.
also,
This kind of I like the idea of just kind of impermanent members. I don't know how you would call it. Just like people who flow back and forth and just like there's not a specific structure because it's all uh, a very loose affiliation. But no need to rush to make it a business and to make somebody the boss. Um, it helps a lot. And also, it's things can collapse less when there's less formal structure, or and not
Yeah,
everything's tied up in a specific project or a specific thing, and you become more flexible. Which, like,
yeah, and I think it also helps when there's like not a lot of money involved. I
yes,
mean, then people drop in, drop out, I think more commonly. I
right,
mean,
right.
it probably helps to not have this rigorous structure if it's like on a volunteer basis.
Yeah, and just kind of like uh, it is a very strange. Like, the best people just need to help each other. It's not a like because you need so much like upfront investment. I think for like proper businesses, and as it has increasingly become aware how unsustainable that sort of thing is, I just like especially if you're making things that are not quote unquote sure bets, like
yeah,
never.
I think it's basically why indie games and small games can afford to have this experimental quality and can experiment in general. Just when we think about the simple economics of bigger studios or or those who work full time on this, they depend on that, and those studios have to bring revenue to keep their workers, and the workers all have families and so on. So that uh, leaves them with a lot less ability to, let's say, go into unknown territories with ideas and things and creations. So I think these smaller like crews or one-man teams have the opportunity to experiment, but also just because their lives do not depend on that. So I think it's like the scale is also an issue for originality,
Yeah,
most probably.
like I've been able to sustain this thing that I do for 4 years because I have no worries about it having to ever make me any money. Uh, like 0% of my livelihood is dependent on Indiepocalypse sales, which is why it can be unprofitable.
And how did the initial idea came up to you? How do you start to make the the whole Indiepocalypse?
I was just like, well, I was making games and I was like working a job that I didn't like, and I was like, I want to make games, but also wouldn't it be nice if I could make money as well? But I was like, I would fry myself constantly because I was like, to make that I have to make the game to be 4 hours long or 6 hours long at a minimum, and etc. It has to be this, and I was like, I didn't want to do that. So I was like, wouldn't it be better if people would actually pay money for smaller games? And as someone who like buys, as we mentioned in the first segment, like indie comics and indie music and stuff like that, and shows that people will clearly pay like $10 for an 8-page zine. I'm like, it could be done in games. So I was like, somebody should do that. Then I was like, well, I guess I'll just do that. And then I just started doing it.
Nice. I mean, just one more like about this the shard game thing about you mentioned the 4 hours.
Yeah.
I think like from my personal perspective, just looking at like these Steam charts, it seems like for a small game, like the refund rate is like 10%. So it's not really. I mean, it's sort of like a little bit overblown, I think.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. And also, this was like 6 years ago. I don't think there was a refund thing that long ago. Maybe I don't remember. Um, but even then, I was like, I wanted to go even shorter. Even I think it is depending on what type of game you make. Because if you are making something like, for instance, the Immaculate Drag, because I'm still on the Steam page, the people who are getting into that are probably not the people who are playing an hour game and then refunding it. You have kind of like probably a bit of a self-selecting audience.
Yeah, as our game is also quite short,
Yeah.
we had this like revelation that in let's say film industry they have short films, and they have like a specific, let's say, distinguished element of film media is short movies, and it's let's say an established part of the medium.
Yeah.
But in games, I think like at least us, we were trying to for example, to find some sort of like a specific name or word to mark your game as like a short experience, but making it short, not in the bad way, let's say, because we like in the games industry, it is usually seen by the players, by the users, that the length of the game is its quality. Like the longer you can play it, the better the game. And if you play it for like a few minutes, that's not good enough, and it's considered to be a bad product from the start.
Right.
So like we thought that it would be interesting whether games will ever get their own, let's say, a name for this kind of movement of that it's a short game, but it's not a bad game. It's just like a short experience, which is of a higher of a high enough quality, but it's just short due to production costs or the amount the creators can spend creating the
Right.
product.
Or just like
Term that I throw around. Oh, sorry. Go
yeah.
ahead.
Go ahead. Go.
I was gonna say the term that I throw around with some people in like my local space that we've started to like is DIY games, because we do feel that it like really embodies sort of the philosophy behind it and still speaks to them being, functional products, but without the sort of general aura of like indie games, which can just become so meaningless after a while, given the disparity in means between various devs.
Yeah, I think it's like indie games is sort of now like I mean like indie music. I mean there's games that have like 50 people working on them and they only like have the aesthetic. Like I think there was like this sort of scandal with Dave the Diver getting like the indie
Yeah,
nomination, though it's made by like a big company.
Right. Because it's like, was it? Is that Nexon or is that Tencent? Which one was that?
is Nexon.
Yeah, you're right. So like, even if you're a subsidiary of Nexon and you're maybe a 10-person, 20-person team, you're still a subsidiary of Nexon.
Yeah, but then there's also like a question, even if you
Right.
like if you're indie and a small team, but if you have a publisher, is it like really indie? If what does indie publisher even mean,
Right.
basically?
Right. What is
You
what
no
is
longer-
pub what does publisher mean in a world where when anyone can publish their work, Like because I feel like historically publisher is like, well, I made a movie, but I can't bring my movie to every movie theater. That's what publishers exist for. I can't put my CD in every. I can't print my own CDs. That's why there are publishers. Publishers were
Yeah, I
like,
mean, realistically, it's investment, right?
right,
Like that's the main role people are looking for.
right. That's what like the modern game publisher is like. They do PR stuff, and I'm sure, and they'll also put it like onto platforms and maybe make a physical edition for it. Port to consoles. But largely they do feel like they are investors more than like. But I guess that's the same in everything. Our authors get advances. It's all messy stuff above my pay grade. Which is
Someone in the chat said that they are an indie publisher and they have opinions on this.
indie publisher. What are your opinions on this indie publisher? Hello. Oops, I clicked on something and I can't see anything anymore. I clicked on their name. I have to go to a different window.
They say that the term indie is almost meaningless these days. But in terms of like uh, in terms of publisher or in terms of the game, what's the and someone agrees worm food. Yeah, you agree.
Right. It doesn't have much like. How do I close? I don't know how to close. Oh, there we go. Found it. There we go. Um, right. I've trended like I trend towards like I say like alternative or underground or bedroom or DIY. Like I use a lot of different words constantly because uh, none
I
of
think
them.
like an interesting like I mean it's sort of different, but like an interesting scene was like the homebrew scene, like
Right.
for the consoles.
Right. Right.
That also like I think could go to this underground um, category or this shelf because like those people I didn't do it, but like they actually made like this for extremely limited audience for people who had like hacked consoles,
Right.
and it
Right.
was interesting.
I think it's mostly just about finding a new word that sticks until people with too much money then start using that word.
Also, the Amaze Festival from Berlin, we've talked before on the show, has created like a different kind of like name for these short and artistic games. They call them art house
Yeah.
games, or and playful media. That's also an interesting spin to the whole, let's say, labeling talk.
Right. Great. But folks, we could spend forever talking about game labeling and genres and mediums. It's a big, wide open what's the space, and it needs infinite amounts of work. But we're also approaching 2 hours of recording on this, so we're gonna start. We're getting close to wrapping it up. And this is to say, I'm beginning my wrap up segment. Boutique. That feels too fancy for me, too bougie for me. I'm just producing this stuff on my own in the same room that I record this in. It's all a singular room. But did anyone have any last pressing statements, questions they needed to get out before we start to wrap this up?
Come good on my end.
Oh, perfect.
Thank you for having me on this. This was great.
No, we are as we go to wrap it up. If you're familiar with shows, casts that we pods that we cast out into the world, and all this sort of stuff. You're familiar with this segment that's coming up next. It's the one that people know. It's the reason you have a guest focused show, and that is when people promote their own content, people plug their stuff. So, the collective of Weekend Warriors, where can people find your stuff if they're looking to find it?
We have a lot of social media accounts, but the ones where we are usually posting things, we are on Instagram. And let's say at the beginning, if you want to play some of our titles and Game Jam games and the latest games, you can follow us on itch.io, and we are basically Weekend Warriors on itch.io. And you can also find us on Twitter by W Studio. But most recently, we are posting on Instagram at weekend.warriors.studio. That's basically if anybody wants to learn about us and take a look at what we do, Instagram would be the place. And we also have our own website. It's weekendwarriors.lt. So it's like weekend/warriors.lt, because we are from Lithuania, from Europe. That's why we're using our own let's say domain name.
Yes, and
that's LT Lithuania.
Yes, and that's Weekend Dash Warriors. If you're familiar with that version of phrasing. But yes, that's where you can find all your stuff, and all those aforementioned links are also just through that website. It's the benefits, like that YouTube link is right there, so you can go and watch that. That you're talking about, that was that Amaze Hyper Talk, right? That was the talk you were mentioning earlier.
Yes,
Yeah.
We had this opportunity because Blonde Festival in Lithuania is collaborating with Amaze Festival, because Berlin is not that far away from where we are located in Lithuania, and we had an opportunity to present a Amaze Hyper Talk.
Yeah, maybe if I can plug one thing.
Yes.
Like there's this Blonde Festival that we mentioned like an hour ago. It's the film festival, and they have like this award and this like showcase for indie games that have like a social team. So it's free to submit, and probably if you're like from like across the ocean, you can probably just like visit remotely, I think. So it's blonde.lt, and like just look at. Basically, if you keep track of that website, they're gonna open like the submission form, and then you can submit it, and it's like I guess like a good place to showcase indie games that are short and have like a social awareness.
Yes, yeah. If you're especially, this is the target audience for this show. Look for things that are like, keep an eye out for just like film festivals, different art festivals, and be like, do they have a games portion? Can I convince them to put my game within their thing? Can I find a way to fit a game within there? There's like it's a good avenue to start looking. Oh yes, there it is. And Worm Food, your stuff. Where can people find it?
Find me on itch.io. That's wormfood.itch.io. It's wormfood with 2 U's.
Yes, and where there
Yes.
ought to be O's, there's only U's. Well, there's one U on the food.
It's confusing. It's a
Yes.
confusing name structure, but it's fine. I gotta add some umlauts.
Yes.
But yeah, other than that, I'm not super active on social media, but you can also find me on Newgrounds if there are any Newgrounds appreciators out there.
Yeah, that's the other true nightmare. It feels like games are feel like you need to like be on social media, and how do you find them if they're not? Um, I don't know, but there should be a way that where every artist in the world shouldn't have to be their own constant PR team and community manager and all those things. Seems exhausting. But
It can be.
that said, myself, of course, you can find at indiepocalypse.com. I also just have my own damn website where you can get Indiepocalypse there. You've got links for all the other stuff there. Indiepocalypse.com/submit if you would like to submit your games to be included in future editions of Indiepocalypse. That's the way you do it. It goes to an itch jam page. Super easy to add your game there. I alluded to tapes earlier. That is, of course, USB sticks inside of cassette cases that look cool. You can get Indiepocalypse ones at indiepocalypse.com/tapes. If you're looking to get your own game on tape or get a number of other indie games in this cool physical format that I'm saying should be the standard physical format for indie devs, that's pizzapranks.com/tape market, I believe is what my current URL for that is. Will there be something that's a tape club coming up soon? And that's why I changed to tape market? Who knows? Maybe. Probably. I don't need to be coy about this kind of stuff, I don't think. I don't need to worry about fucking game, my marketing cycle or whatever, to say that there's going to be a monthly game club and that's why I'm doing that. Keep an eye out in March probably for that. I've got 4 games lined up, which is enough to give myself runway to just keep on doing it. It's 4 months to find a 5th game, and then 4 months to find a 6th and 7th and 8th. And you're right. The question of, can I just keep making monthly things that I have to maintain forever? And who knows? That said, indiepocalypse.com/Patreon. If you like monthly things, you can subscribe there and get Indiepocalypse monthly. It's basically what you think it is. You subscribe, you pay $15 a month, and you get an issue of Indiepocalypse. It's like a magazine subscription. You know how it works. But if you pay $5 a month or $50 a year, you can get just the commissioned game. So you get one new. If you like that sock hop punk cake model, but you're like, well, what if it was cool if I got it from a different game dev that didn't know every single month? That is the exact same model. I've much like I steal everything else, all the other ideas that good people have, I took that idea as well. So that model exists if you just want one brand new game, newly commissioned from a developer each month. It's only $5 a month, US. I think that's it. I don't think I have any other URLs, probably. I don't remember. Anyway, that's it. That's the show. Where am I looking? Right, that's what I was looking for this guy, for my little foobar, and I found it. Povilas, Carolas, Ignas, Wormfood, thank you all for being here. Thank you for hanging out on the show. Thank you for submitting games, making games, and all of that. glad to hang out and chat and meet new people every week. Thank you all for listening as well, either this week or next week. Or should I have a sign off? Should there be a sign off thing? I don't know.
What's your signature?
For the opportunity.
Yeah, I don't have a signature sign off. Give me money so that I can give it to other people. I don't know. Go
Survive the Indiepocalypse.
Yes, do something. Do something out there. Who knows? Goodbye.